I guess over the last 3 years or so, there's been a massive demand for Wi-Fi everywhere. You see the proliferation of devices. Over 80% of US teenagers own a smartphone. That is even higher in most countries in Europe. So many people have a smartphone. They need Wi-Fi because they need performance. People have 3G and 4G connections on their smartphones, but that doesn't give you the performance you need for applications like Facebook and Twitter. Instagram, which is a relatively new application, introduced video, for example, on the 20th of June, just over a month ago, and within 24 hours it became the top traffic on the internet. So there is this huge demand for connection. People want to be always connected, no matter where they are. Oftentimes we're asked, why does my smartphone not work as well in the office as it does at home? Well, that's because you need to have better performing wireless. Wi-Fi in public venues hasn't worked for a long while because Wi-Fi that you use at home is different to Wi-Fi in public venues. Wi-Fi is a shared medium, which means, if you have two people using the network versus 200, 2,000, the performance is going to be very, very different. We've seen a lot of deployments here in central London, public Wi-Fi, where you had the availability of signal, as in you could connect, but there's no throughput. How many times have you sat at a football game or another sporting event where you've got full bars of signal on your device, yet you can't send a message or you can't post a Facebook update because there isn't capacity? So you need to have a different type of network design. What Xirrus does is we build this very high performance wireless technology that scales to tens of thousands of users at any one time at any one location. And that is actually quite unique. We've seen it very painfully here in the UK last year at the Olympics, where at the Olympic Stadium, the quality of the Wi-Fi is very, very poor. You saw the Olympic Committee had to issue a press release asking people to stop using their devices because it was impacting their ability to track athletes during the bicycle race around London. We saw in Wimbledon, there were lots of complaints on Twitter of the performance of the Wi-Fi at Wimbledon when you had up to 120,000 tweets per minute on the final itself just this year. So it's really more about performance than it is about signal, and that's really where the challenge has been, particularly for large public venues. And you need to think about it very differently. You need a different set of technology. It has to be very scalable because everyone's got at least one device. In many cases, people are bringing 2 or even 3 devices around with them all the time. And that really changes the dynamics of the performance that's required of the network. There are many commercial benefits to offering free Wi-Fi for everybody. From the user's perspective, you get obviously access to internet and related services. Basically, your applications simply work. So that's really good news for them. In addition, from a sporting perspective, you can have a better fan experience. So you can engage closer with your favorite football club or your rugby club or cricket club, etc. Find out updates on venues, so you don't have to rely on printed media that has to be sent out, sometimes very expensively, out to users. You can have a connection with the players. You can buy your sporting goods at a discount. So for the end user or the individual, it's a fantastic experience. The commercial opportunities for the organization are enormous because, first of all, you know who your supporter is. In sports, for example, many of the Premier League clubs have hundreds of millions of fans worldwide. They don't always know who they are. They don't know what they prefer. They don't know whether they like to come to the games or watch from home. This is a way of knowing who your customer is because you got to register. You register your email address, typically your mobile phone number. This is very important information for the clubs to have. Now they can form a communications medium between the user and the organization itself. In healthcare, it's the same thing. The ability to communicate directly with the user, understand their preference, and communicate faster. The digitization of medical records is a huge improvement in cost savings for NHS, for example, and other medical institutions on a worldwide basis. So imagine getting your results sent to you directly on email or through a secure web portal rather than having to have patients come back in to meet with the doctor, etc. The ability for doctors to collaborate much better over wireless with handheld devices in hospitals is another huge advantage. You look at massive improvements in education. E-books right now, they're updated online automatically, no printing costs. Kids don't have to go with backpacks wearing half a ton on their shoulders. That costs hundreds or even in some cases thousands of pounds for their parents. they can just put it on their iPad. Schools can provide them the technology as well. So wireless is a real enabler for everyone, and there are opportunities commercially for the individual to have a better service with the service provider they're interfacing with, sports, medical, educational. And there are opportunities for the organizations to communicate better and monetize and get a much better return. Most of our customers who deploy our services typically have an ROI less than 6 months on the investment. That's pretty good. Public Wi-Fi is more safe than people think it is, for the simple reason that 2 years ago, 80% of the traffic on smartphones was web-based. So if you're connecting to a public Wi-Fi network that has an open network, so it has no encryption, the data that you send from your device into the network is not encrypted. That is unless, of course, you're connecting to a secure site. More and more now, though, the traffic on smartphones is based on the internal application. So Facebook is a perfect example, Instagram, email, etc. And most of these applications support SSL or native encryption. So even though the transport between you and the device is actually clear, a lot of the traffic is actually sent in an encrypted fashion, just as it is on the 3G and 4G networks or inside corporate networks. So it is pretty secure. Nothing's ever secure. Once you transmit information from A to B, it can be hacked, it can be stored, eventually somebody can decrypt it. But the risks are not as high as one might think. The challenge occurs when you do general purpose web browsing on a public hotspot without encryption. Then other people can pretty easily see what you're doing. They can see where you're going. In most cases though, for websites today, once you get to personally identifiable information, you move automatically into a HTTPS or an SSL encrypted stream, so it protects a lot of the data. So I guess the usual T's and C's will always apply. Be careful what you do on the internet because there are always people watching. But is it much more different than private networks or home networks? Probably not. Almost half of the home networks in many locations in the world have open SSIDs themselves. So your neighbors can just as handily see what you're doing as they can in public hotspots. So always make sure that you're in a secure ID, SSID if possible, and make sure that your applications are secured using SSL. You'll see the little lock typically or the HTTPS when you're running on a web service, and many of the native applications on smartphones are encrypted. So you should be pretty safe.